Alright guys, going to take you through a push session today. So chest and shoulders and triceps, and just trying to explain the methodology behind the session layout and how I structure my training. So currently in the 6th and final week of my current training block, which means that volume is very, very high, and I'm knackered as a result. And also intensity today is going to be 0 reps in reserve, which will look good for the camera, but it's not how I train every week. I build volume and intensity across that 6-week block, then deload, repeat the process. So I've been dieting for 24 weeks now, 12.5 kilos down. So what I found is sort of fatigue does accumulate a little bit quicker across that mesocycle than it normally would, and it gets to be a little bit of a struggle in the 5th and 6th weeks. And I'm going to be taking you through that 6-week push session today. So the emphasis for this session for myself is actually on lateral delts and triceps, not so much chest. Chest is actually a really strong muscle group for me, or looks good, not necessarily that strong. So the session layout will be a little bit weird to look at. I'll actually include a breakdown of that in the video. So we're going to start with lateral delts, trying to train them and emphasize through their full working range. So we're going to have a couple of movements for lateral delts, and we're also going to be prioritizing triceps ahead of chest. So we'll do the first tricep movement, the heaviest tricep movement, before we get into the chest stuff. Reason being, chest grows very easily for me, so even training it after triceps, I get enough stimulus to keep it where it is. I'm trying to bring up lateral delts and triceps to be on the same level as chest. So we've got machine lateral raise to start with. The reason I start with this one is because it's got a fairly even resistance profile. It's hard through that whole range for lateral delt. The emphasis I'm trying to use here is the lengthen range. So what we want to try and do is initiate with a good drive from the bottom of the rep, and we're not holding at the top. So I'm looking fairly aggressive from the bottom, but we're not holding in that weakest top position. And we're looking here, no reps left in the tank. That's annoying. So we've got a chest supported dumbbell lateral raise. We're looking for 2 things here. Firstly, we're trying to train your lateral delts in the scapular plane rather than straight out to the side. Lateral delts actually got 3 divisions, so if you've got the volume to attribute to it, it makes sense to train it in different planes of motion, try and develop all of those heads as evenly as you can, okay? What we're aiming for here for this is to do a regression set. So rather than dropping the load down, we're going to be making the tempo easier as you get close to failure. And the idea being that you can accumulate more effective reps that are in that close proximity to failure. So I'm going to aim for 8 with a 2-second isometric at the top, straight into 8 with a 1-second isometric at the top, and then straight into no isometric to failure, working more that mid-range. Got dumbbell shoulder press next. I'll put these after the lateral raise variations for a couple of reasons. Number one, most people, potentially not me, but most people have more anterior delt than they do of the other heads of the deltoid, okay? So it tends to be less of a priority. That's the first reason I would tend to structure the presses after I do the lateral raise work. Second reason is that I actually have an AC joint injury. I've got a bit of arthritis in it. And by doing the isolation stuff first, I can warm up the shoulder joint, and also I pre-fatigue the delts a little bit so that I reduce the amount of weight needed to work to failure. With these, I tend to use a slightly more declined angle than most people would for shoulder pressing. Most people go very, very upright. I find that this is easiest on my shoulders and allows me to connect best with my anterior delts. You'll also notice my elbows are a little bit in front of me. Next up, we've got California press using the Swiss bar. So I like to use the Swiss bar because it's nice and easy on your elbows, doesn't force you round into that pronated grip, nice and neutral. And what we're trying to do here is hit the length and range of the triceps. Okay, and I'm hitting triceps before chest because they're an area I'm looking to prioritise over chest. Okay, most people don't realise there's actually more muscle mass in your triceps than there is in your chest. So doing 5 chest exercises and just banging triceps as an afterthought isn't really an effective training split. So we've got concentric chest press next, looking to overload that fully shortened range of the chest. Key with hypertrophy training is trying to make sure that you are attributing a decent amount of tension through all the different ranges of the muscle. So both that shortened range and lengthened range. Here we're looking for a hard concentric squeeze. Next up, we've got dumbbell incline press. We're trying to work here the clavicular fibres of the pec. More trying to bias them rather than isolate. That's pretty much impossible. So what we're looking to do here is a relatively tucked elbow path. So we're lining up that upper arm with those fibres we're trying to target here. And we're looking to exaggerate that stretched, lengthened portion of the rep rather than the squeeze at the top where we've got no tension. So we've got clavicular pec fly. It's an exercise I pinched from N1 Education. So what we're trying to do here is again isolate those upper fibres of the chest. This is the one area of my chest I really want to bring up, so I try and bias that with most of my chest training exercises. So here we're coming up and into the middle, trying to isolate these fibres here. exercise is going to be a cable crossover, trying to work the short and the mid-range of the triceps, a little bit of isolation work to finish the session. Going to be using cuffs for this, just because I find it much easier on the elbows. I don't have to think about gripping onto the cable itself. Yeah.